Welcome to Bible Theory Podcast. My name is Jesse, aka the Chicano Knox, coming live and direct this late Friday with y'all. Look, here at Bible Theory Podcast, we talk about the church. We take it to the streets. We don't keep it within the four walls of the church or seminary or nothing like that. Yo, we talk about the doctrine of the church from a reform perspective, and we review tons of stuff, everything from a church perspective, digging deeper, ever more deeper. You know what I mean? So, I'm excited for this one. We're going to be covering a lot of stuff. So, if this is your first time, honestly, welcome and thank you so much for dropping by and checking us out. Don't forget to leave a comment down below and let me know if this is your first time with us, enjoying the show. Sit back, eat some popcorn. Working out, whatever you're doing right now. Let me know where you're from. I'm always looking to, find people, connect, you know what I mean? Start that conversation. So go ahead, engage with me in the comments below. Okay. So if you find this, content edifying, don't forget to like and subscribe to this video. I'm trying to grow the channel. It helps me out a lot. And it tells the algorithm and people at YouTube that this is valuable content and that this channel is valuable to you as well. So, and if you're returning, welcome back. Thank you so much for checking back in, and you know what to do. And you know what I mean. So, like I said last time in the last, in the first live stream I did in a long time, go ahead and check out my website, the chicanonox.com, and there you're going to go ahead and find a newsletter, sign up for free with your email, and I appreciate the support. Thank you so much. Anyways, if you see the background, you'll see my new window that I installed, and that's the back. That's the backyard with the lake point of view there. So, anyways, all right. So let's go ahead and get started with the Bible verse. I was reading First John today. It was a great letter. It was a short read. That's why I chose it. Sometimes in my personal reading, I have to like choose long things. Last time I felt like beefy and more lengthy stuff, so I chose the book of Jeremiah. This time around, I wanted something more speedy and like heartbreaking as well. So I went to First John, and it hit the spot. And this verse in particular is what this whole podcast, this live stream, is going to be about. First John chapter 4, verse 1. And it says, and I quote, "Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. For many false prophets have gone out into the world." End quote. So this verse right here is a much needed Bible verse in our day. I think you would agree, yeah? Go ahead and drop a comment. Let me know what do you think. What are your thoughts about this comment? About this verse? Have you read First John? What do you think about First John? Anyways, but I think it's a much needed Bible verse in our day. It speaks volumes. Obviously, it was written by the Apostle John. John is trying to tell us point blank that not everyone who claims to be from God or of God is not really from God. It's not really of God, really? Yes. It's kind of like a no-brainer, but that's what he's trying to tell us. If I want to summarize it for you, John is telling the church that yes, it is necessary to test preachers and teachers of the faith concerning what? Test them for what? Test them for orthodoxy. Yes. And how do you do that, by the way? By listening, by listening what they teach, listening, look at their character sometimes. You shall know them by their fruits. That's another one. You shall know them by the words that are coming out of my mouth. You know what I mean? So that's the test there. I think those are some of the tests. But whether it is like concerning orthodoxy, like what is standard beliefs according to the West as well. That's another test right there. You could look for orthodoxy, whether it be their position in the Trinity, whether it be the five solas of the Reformation, whether it be the deity of Jesus, or something as simple as the authority of Scripture. Those are some of the stat or metrics, bars markers of orthodoxy that you could look for in a teacher in the church, as well as those outside the church, because you got to understand the context that we're living. We live in the Western world that has been evangelized since, forever, since the 900s, since the Vikings were converted to Christianity. You have wave after wave of Christian missionaries, Christian teachers, Christian organizations, revolutions, down spurts, evil things happen, and then the church continues to grow and grow and grow. And we are where we are right now because of God's grace, God's sovereignty. But there's a lot of teachers that have came out since the 900s in the Western world. So what I'm trying to say is a lot of false prophets have come and gone, and there's many among us, even outside the church. John is confirming something scary. He's confirming a scary situation here, I think, basically by saying many false prophets have indeed gone out into the world. They are employed. They are active, proactive, revolutionary in thought, perhaps, provocative with their words, perhaps. But you might be like, prophets. Isn't prophets like ordained ministers nowadays? Like, in a sense, in one sense, they're prophets because they're breaking down God's word to you. Yes. But prophets are not like the preachers today in every church are not prophets, like in the sense of the Old Testament or very early first century, like John the Baptist. I would consider the last prophet. Obviously, Jesus will be the ultimate prophet because he has three offices. The West says the prophet, priest, and king. So to answer the question, no, we don't have prophets today in the Old Testament sense or in the biblical sense. People, what are prophets? Prophets, I think, are people who speak on the behalf of God, who can accurately predict the future, and not only that, but they can also explain and apply God's will to people's lives. I think that's how I would explain it. Go ahead and drop a comment. Let me know, to you in your mind, what is a prophet? Because we don't have prophets today. Many people. There's some people out there from certain denominations that would say they're prophets because they said a thing or two. But I will tell you the truth. They are not prophets. They are not prophets. There's no prophets. That office is over. That calling, biblically, theologically speaking, has been fulfilled in Jesus, who is the prophet, priest, and king, the three offices. Obviously, today, prophets wear many hats. Sometimes they're news hosts, sometimes they're presidents, sometimes they're celebrities, sometimes they're rappers. Prophets nowadays could win Grammy awards and like be on the front cover. Sometimes they're preachers, obviously. Other times, they're mechanics working on your car, and then they wrap up and they tell you a good word or two, and it's not accurate to the Trinity or something like that. You're like, man, that's not a prophet. Sorry. But today there are false prophets, and they could be mystics, and they could tell you about your dreams. And there's false, obviously the Roman Catholic priest is a false prophet in my view, because in my view, they perform the mass. That is his idolatry and false prophecy, obviously. False prophets could also be the what we commonly call televangelists, asking you for money, trying to jib you, trying to rob you. You know what I mean? Trying to get rich quick kind of thing. False prophets can be podcasters on here, you know what I mean? Like on these YouTubes, and they're trying to translate the Bible for you, and these podcasts on Spotify, and who read the Bible through a whole year, and they try to apply it to you. Or false prophets could be like these you know, like Logan Paul. Logan Paul is in my point of view, false prophet. And I'll tell you why. Because who is Logan Paul? Well, he is a boxer, he is an actor, he's a podcaster. He's a guy who has the reach of 20 million people online with his words. And he is breaking the will of God down for people, blasphemy, all these things. Let me go ahead and show you this clip here, and you're going to see what I'm trying to tell you here. Let's go check it out.
Honest with you, bro. Jesus Christ.
Oh God, bro.
And people don't think that about him. That guy is fucking dope. I disagree. I don't think that we have to condemn homosexuality. I don't think that we have to condemn sex before marriage. I don't know if I can get behind. Like, that's silly to me. That seems silly to me. So I think it's a silly practice to engage in, and I think it deserves satire. You all think you're right, and you think that the Muslims are going to hell, and they think that you're going to hell. Why we have to perpetuate a belief that is silly?
I know people that hate me, that treat me better about my faith than you, and you're my best friend. One that really hurt me is you told me I need a therapist because I believe in Jesus. What do I need a therapist for then?
Jesus isn't doing it for you, and I
what do I need a therapist for?
I don't believe you're as emotionally mature as you could be. I don't think the prayer is doing enough. I think actual conversation with a medical professional will help you learn and discover a lot more about yourself that may open up a bit more wavelengths in your brain to become the person that you want to become. Conversion therapy, like what
is conversion therapy?
It's something your church does, George.
Stop saying my church, bro. I don't know what.
But it's something your church does.
But it's also something that
everyone wants to be coddled into the truth. Everyone wants to be handheld and walked up the mountain with a buddy instead of climbing it themselves.
All right, so there's a lot of things going on in that clip. It's a little bit old, but it's definitely a viral clip of Logan Paul, a clear example of a false prophet, somebody who fits the bill because he's breaking down theology, he's breaking down the will of God, he's applying it to people's lives. If he knows it or not, he's very, very much impactful in people's lives. People look up to him and his masculinity, and he's like an alpha male. He could do 30 push-ups without breaking a sweat. He's a boxer. He's a millionaire. Young men idolize this guy, and he easily has access to 23 million people around the world. Okay, that's a lot. So what he just said here, obviously there's a lot of things he said. Let's go ahead and break it down. Things that he said about the church, obviously, but we're going to go ahead and break it down. So the number one thing I want to point out to what's wrong with this take on the church and on Jesus is simple blasphemy of the first degree, because he's teaching thousands of kids that Jesus is essentially not God. Is blasphemy. Jesus is God. He says, I am that I am. Before Abraham, Jesus says, I am. The transfiguration, the power over the natural order. Okay, I could go on and on. His incarnation, for example. It's a destruction of the incarnation. Boom. Jesus has, okay. The deity of Jesus, let's just stick to the doctrines here. The deity of the Jesus is the blasphemy. Once you get rid of the incarnation, you attack and you go after the deity of Jesus. Because if he's not God in the flesh, then he's not God at all. Sometimes people even make up their own doctrine and say he's a little God. He's a lesser degree God in quality and quantity. Wrong. Holiness. Then they attack Jesus. He attacked Jesus in his holiness, saying that all kinds of blasphemous stuff about Jesus, his character, who he is, who he was. And therefore, it attacks his uniqueness of Jesus. The person and the work of Jesus are the last items on his bucket list to unravel and to toss behind his shoulder like a paper trash bag. You know what I mean? Whatever. So Logan here is a false prophet when it comes to these doctrines. I would say I wouldn't trust him here when it comes to doctrine, when it comes to the church, when it comes to the identity and authority of Jesus, his deity. I wouldn't trust Logan here. I'm sorry. I wouldn't trust him. I would trust him in his skills of boxing, athleticism, teaching me the basics of how to do a push-up, trying to spot me at the gym, perhaps. Like maybe I would trust him with those things because he's an expert of how to work out. But at that point as well, I would say there's probably better um athletes out there to trust in that area as well. Like, you know what I mean? So like probably I wouldn't trust him here. I'm assuming this based on what he said. He probably never read Calvin before. I'm assuming he probably never read a Spurgeon sermon before or the Bible. Because if you read at least Calvin, a little bit of Calvin, a little bit of Spurgeon, his books, at least one or two of his books, his pamphlet, something. And then accurately read the Gospels. You're simply are going to have a hard time committing all these blasphemies, full stop. It's going to be harder for you. I think what he's doing here, he is venting. He's doing great harm to a lot of kids. A lot of young women look up to him because, oh, he's cute or blah, blah, blah. A lot of people, he's doing great harm here if he knows it or not. It's his freedom. It's his opinion. It's his show. I'm not going to tell him how to run his show, but I am going to tell him that he's acting and behaving and qualifying with flying colors to be a false prophet. Now, thanks to the Da Vinci Code, that famous book, it believes very similar things, but it would tell you these things in a very poetic, more philosophical, mystic type approach. Logan here, it's a little bit more grimy, individualistic, arrogant type approach, not really philosophical, poetic, just blah, like very secular. So the Da Vinci Code does believe that Jesus had sex because it believes that his bloodline continues unto this day. The Roman Catholic Church, the so-called Christians in that world, was trying to keep it under the wraps like a conspiracy, and therefore that's where the whole book gets his fame from. You know what I mean? So he gets a lot of that from the Da Vinci Code. Who doesn't? A lot of false prophets who don't know orthodoxy, that is standard historical reform, anything like that, is going to fall into the ditch of the Da Vinci Code type stuff. Logan here is replacing it, repackaging it with nice, like I said, a little taste of a big taste of secularism, you know what I mean? And not enough of that Roman Catholic stuff. That's the first thing, blasphemy. The second thing I noticed in this video is he doesn't want to condemn or be against anything sexual. Have you noticed that? He says he doesn't want to condemn homosexuality and all that stuff. God has spoken here concerning sex before marriage, for example. God has spoken. Oh, what did he say? Fornication. There's a bunch of Bible verses on fornication. I encourage Logan here and many to do a word search on fornication and see how many Bible verses comes up. Burning with lust, looking at women, for example. I talked about that last time. The Proverbs says a lot about this. Just read the Proverbs and look how the proverb treats a prostitute, and how it portrays that kind of lifestyle. A prostitute obviously is someone who exchanges her body for money. And that industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry right now. So God has spoken. Like, I know Logan is trying to be clear and bold about this, and I appreciate his honesty. I appreciate him just telling me what he believes, where he stands on the map. But unfortunately, I'm gonna tell him, look, Logan, I know you're trying to be bold here, you're trying to make your stake. You're trying to tell me very clearly what you believe, but listen, God has spoken very clearly about these things. These things are not just mistakes or mishaps or whatever. They're called sin. Like, for example, the sin of homosexuality, the sin of lesbianism, the sin of transgenderism, the sin of sex before marriage, all these sins that are sexual, like the sin of rape, all these sins are are against God, are against a holy God, and God has spoken in great lengths about these things. God is a holy God, Logan. So what you're trying to do here is try to speak against what God has spoken. You're being a false prophet, Logan. That's what I would say. That's what he's doing here, but he may not know, but he's actively doing. Actually, presuppositional apologetics would say that he knows that there is a God, but he's suppressing it in his unrighteousness right here. So, boom. Paul the Apostle, for example, goes great lengths to talk about the sexual behavior to the church in the city of Corinth. Paul mentions homosexuality to the church in Rome. You know, John the apostle mentions it in the book of Revelation. I could go on and on. God hates sin. All sin is evil in God's sight, okay, and deserving God's wrath. But what does God do? He does something awesome that's unexpected, that you cannot bank on. If you could predict the future, you would not bank on this, because God is a just God and he must condemn. So he has condemned his son, Jesus. He offers forgiveness in Jesus only to those who turn away from such practices. There's no other forgiveness found. There's no forgiveness outside of the church. There's no forgiveness outside of Jesus. And what Logan here is doing is only affirming what pop culture has affirmed, and what pop culture has recently been promoting in the movies, in the schools, and what he's doing here, I think, is he's just going along with it. He doesn't want to be marked and canceled, lose his money, all that stuff. That's what I think what he's doing subconsciously. He's trying to be accepted and he's trying to be liked. And lastly, the last thing I think here is I want to refute this argument. No, you do not need a therapist if you believe and follow and love Jesus Christ. You don't. There's nothing wrong with you if you believe Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. You don't need a therapist. Like, I've been on the streets, many times preaching, open air preaching, evangelism and stuff like that. I never heard such a statement like that before. Someone coming out and saying, if you believe in Jesus, you need a therapist. That's like straight up like an insult, I think. That's radical. I never heard such thing like that before. I heard many things, but not that one. That's a new one. So in fact, people who have been mentally damaged by sin, I would say the opposite. Yes, you do need a therapist if you've been mentally damaged, because sometimes when you live a life of sin, there's still consequences of that sin left over in your physical body, even after you accept Jesus and follow him and trust him and love him. Once you do all that, obviously, but there's sometimes in some people that they've been involved in all kinds of sin. Some of those sins they have last longing consequences in their minds, in their brain, all these things that will affect them all their lives until they leave the earth, right? So sometimes they need extra help medically. Sometimes they really do probably need a biblical counselor. So I would say that if you follow Jesus and you have a condition and you struggle in your mentality or something medically that affects your walk, that affects your life, then yes, that's probably a damage from a certain sin, a lifestyle you live. And you need probably to seek some medical help in that situation. Jesus is your help in your great need, the Bible says. Isn't that comforting? Even for those who are mentally distressed, because when people face problems, I don't know about you, but when you face problems, you get anxious. You get like the walls close in. You know what I mean? And you start to panic. Maybe maybe you start to come up with your own solutions and not trust God. Like I do that sometimes, and I'm sure you do that too. But Jesus says that he's there for you in those great trials, that Jesus will be your great help, the Bible says. And that Jesus says that his burden is light. And the burdens that you carry that are sinful and whatever are heavier than the burden that Jesus will give you. The Bible says that Jesus will never forsake you. When the world, all it does is forsake you. The sex, that forsakes you. The drugs, those things forsake you. Like all kinds of things forsake you except Jesus says. Isn't that an amazing promise? Like there's tons of promises in the Bible that gives us reassurance and awesome confirmation on that. So like if you love Jesus, you will obey me. That's another one. But anyways, there's so many. So Logan thinks very little of Jesus here. It's very sad, to see him being, teaching these kind of blasphemies and ill, vain ideologies, these awful ideas to kids. It's very sad, very tragic. Him promoting a false Christianity, putting his friend down. If you notice in that clip, he just straight up puts his friend down. That's not a friend, bro. Leave him, bro. That's like unfriend him, unfollow him. That dude's a jerk. Doesn't care for you, doesn't love you as you really think he does. He believes in the false doctrine of the church. He's a false prophet. Anyways, let's go ahead and take a 30-second here. And we'll come back and talk about the next topic, all right? All right. All right, welcome back. Welcome back. Don't forget to go over to my website, thechicano.knox.com, and sign up for that newsletter. All right, so the next thing we're going to go ahead and talk about is, I believe, a pastor, a Reformed dude, and his pastor is named Robert Cunningham. I don't know him personally. I haven't read his books or his white papers, anything like that. So what gives? Why are you talking about somebody you don't know, bro? Because he's a pastor, he's a public figure. He came out and said this thing about the church and all these things. And I have, my podcast is about the church. So I talk about the church in all angles. So I have the right to talk about it, bro. All right. So Pastor Robert Cunningham, this bro. Let's go ahead and check him out because recently at a TGC, Together Gospel Coalition, whatever, interview, he revealed something very revealing about his wokeness. And this is, supposedly he's a conservative pastor from Kentucky. Whoa. Okay. But anyways, he's responding to a question about President Trump, and his response is very revealing. And what I mean by that is that, he's really, really woke. But let's go ahead and listen to this clip. And then I'll come back and let's break it down.
And I was able to be one of the first critics of evangelical support of Donald Trump as a pastor in a Trump state with people in the pews, Donald Trump. Here's why I was able to pull that off. Because I know my people and I love my people and they love me. And so even in my criticism of Donald Trump, I also said, hey, listen, everybody in the rest of the country, angry at every person who voted for Donald Trump. I know these people. I know these people, and you may disagree with their vote. They're lovely people. And the vast majority of them held their nose and voted for what they thought was the better of two options. And they liked his policies. They wanted his justices. And so they, they held their nose and voted. And the MAGA people left my church. All that's left are those who just said, I wish that guy would shut up, but I voted for him. I did have some folks leave because they did get caught up in some toxic QAnon Christian nationalism stuff. And I want to be careful with this. This is PCA talk. I don't know how your world practices church discipline, but we didn't let them leave graciously. I'm thinking of a couple folks. We did not say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't fit you. Let me connect you with the QAnon church down the road." We practiced church discipline. We wrote them a letter and said, and it was, it was humble, it was kind, it was gracious, but it was firm that we think you're going down a path of destruction.
Oh, dude. All right, so we're going to go ahead and break this down. So the first thing I want to say, the first thing I noticed, there's a lot of things he said here. If you did not see it, rewind it, rewatch it. But anyways, let me break it down. So the first thing I caught is that on his Twitter feed, he says, he makes it very clear, I'm a conservative. But in this whole interview, he never mentions anything about his own conservative beliefs, his own conservative interests in his background and conservatism, anything like that. Like, I'm not equating conservatism with Christianity because they're not the same, obviously. But like his conservative principles and values that supposedly he holds to, makes very clear on his Twitter page. But he never mentions it here. I just thought to point that out. I'm putting it out there. It's very interesting. Let's go ahead and look at Kentucky. Kentucky, he says, "Oh, I live in a red state." Bro, like, Kentucky is a red state, but Kentucky is not a Christian state, bro. Like, conservatism is not Christianity. You should know that, but he did not distinguish the two. He fails to distinguish the two, and it irritates me. Historically, yes, Kentucky has been politically active. But if you look at it, let's go ahead and look at Kentucky, bro. Kentucky has been bluer than red, more bluer than redder. I don't even know that word. Has been more Democrat liberal than Republican. Since 1992, Democrats have won the state governorship 24 times, while Republicans only won 8 times. So is Kentucky a conservative state, a GOP type state? He fails to mention this, but I forgive him for being ignorant in this area. So let's go on. So in the Senate race, the Republicans have won more times than the Democrats. So maybe he's meaning on the Senate side, but he fails to mention that. Republicans have not really done much with their power in those a bunch of times in the Senate races, by the way. I looked it up. There's not much they have done. In 2019, very, very recently, they passed a near ban on abortion, which is way more conservative. If you read the bill, is way more conservative than other red states like Florida or Arizona. You look it up, Kentucky is way more conservative when it comes to pro-life than Florida and Arizona as of 2019. And that's only the recent most powerful move that I could find from the GOP. This pastor obviously is a smart dude. Pastor Cunningham is a PhD candidate or whatever. He's a smart guy. And he's really showing his dumbness. This guy is kind of dumb as a doornail, obviously, when it comes to certain things, because he claims to be like the first one against Donald Trump in the PCA. And he claims to be proud of it. Like, first of all, it's not a badge of honor to be against Donald Trump, because guess what? It's the new black. It's fashionable to be against Donald Trump. So what's What makes you different? Everybody at CNN, everybody in Fox, everybody in the whole world, it seems to be against Donald Trump. Obviously, just go downtown LA, downtown San Antonio, downtown Denver, go all to these liberal downtown metropolitans and mention Donald Trump. And most people would tell you they hate him, they won't vote for him, blah, blah, blah. So, how is being the first one to hate him being a badge of honor? How can you really be proud of it? I don't think it's a badge of honor. I don't think you should be really proud of it. It's not unique. Everybody has it. You know, it's kind of like everybody has a Honda. It's like, what makes you think you're special? And he's proud of what? Transgenderism? He's proud of what? The murder of babies that the Democrats fully endorse and fully support? How is that to make yourself known as a pastor to say, I'm against a party that bans abortion, right? That's basically what he's kind of saying. So what does that mean? You're for abortion? You're for the party that supports that? Where are you? Right? He's not clear on that. But I'm assuming that if he's against Donald Trump, then he must be for the murder of babies and transgenderism. And he could come out and say, well, I never voted. Then I'll say, then obviously that's your right not to vote. It's your full right not to participate in the electoral system. But a no vote is a vote. Anyways, I think that's a different conversation. But being against Trump is not radical anymore. It's normal. It's nothing special. It's actually to be against pro-life. It's not radical no more. Like, it's a fashion trend, you know. Replacing the gospel though in his church with the message of I'm the first one against Donald Trump in the PCA. That is radical. To replace the gospel and to replace it with the message of saying I'm the first one in the PCA to be against Donald Trump, that is radical. Whoa. Preaching against Trump on a Sunday? Whoa. Now that's radical. Why? Because your whole focus now is off Jesus, is off the scriptures, is off what the purpose of the pulpit is supposed to be. And now it's on a political candidate, a president, Donald Trump. That's radical. Preaching against your people who you know is going to vote for him no matter what, and your whole goal is to get them to change their minds and kick them out, that's radical. Now, this guy is a false prophet for doing this. He's a false prophet because many people, bro, this goes on to my second point. Many people left liberal churches in 2020. There was a huge movement, a huge shuffle, a huge exodus out of liberal churches, not because of some conspiracy theory, but actually the opposite. Here's one thing I noticed. Hate Donald Trump or love him. He made many people in the church show their true colors politically and ideologically. He made them show up. He made them show their true colors. Donald Trump made that possible in 2020, 2016, but 2020 really. And for that, I appreciate that for him. So thank you, Donald Trump, for doing that. For within the PCA, within the Southern Baptist, within pretty much any denomination and non-denomination. Now, you could hate the man or love the man, but for that one fact, I appreciate him. I appreciate him for doing that. This includes the church. So many so-called preachers of the gospel has come out in favor of so many crazy things, yo. Like, we would have never known these things that they were for if it wasn't for Trump. So thank him for that. So, like, for example, many pastors have been in favor of vaccines, no questions, shut up and take it, all those things, right? Many pastors have been in favor of church closures, shutting down their church, bro. How many pastors are guilty of shutting down their church, refusing to preach the gospel in person, refusing to teach the gospel in person because the state told them to shut down the state told them to jump, and they say, how high? Mask mandates, you need to do this, you need to do that. How many churches have obediently, like a small little puppy, obeyed every single thing that the government has said, jot and tittle, and all these things? And then how many churches that are falling in line of these type of ideologies in 2020 that, maybe some of the church members that wanted to leave because they didn't feel comfortable, they didn't believe in this, they saw a different view. How many of those people got church discipline from these type of churches like this pastor just mentioned? A lot. So, and he fails to mention any of that, to give them any accreditation, to mention any of these things. And if you believe contrary, yet you're a conspiracy theorist, bogus, bro. It shows you how dumb he is, not even to think logically. Yo, and this guy's a PhD, man, get out of here. Discipline for what? For being Republican, for believing, like, I don't believe in mandates, bro. I don't believe in vaccines. Me and my family don't do that. Hey, man, I wear a mask only like in a government building if I need to, but like, you know what? I'm not gonna wear a mask to church, bro. Then I want to show up to church. You're gonna discipline me for wanting to show up to church. Okay. But yet, this is what this guy mentioned. Many pastors have done this, bro. False prophet. Why did these people leave? I think here's a real reason. Real people left because they saw these so-called pastors as wolves, bro. They saw them as weak, like wolves in sheep's clothing, repeating the same talking points that that are being said on the media and stuff, CNN and stuff. The state, like, what? My pastor, I thought he was bold and he had a backbone. Like, why is he saying the same stuff there that these evil people are saying? Like, I don't want to be here no more. I want to leave, right? So that's why they left, I think. People saw these pastors that they were not loving their neighbors. Really, they were not authentic, and then they were not gospel centric, yo. They were state centric. Obey the state no matter what. That's what they're do. That's what they're robots. So that's why a lot of people left. Once again, he's sending out a virtual signal here, saying the same old stuff. He was a champion of cleansing his church body of these so-called wicked. What are they wicked for? For being pro-life, pro-God, what? Pro-Trump, and they don't want to wear a mask. So that those things are qualifications of church discipline. And we don't know none of those things because this is PCA talk. Get out of here, bro. It's not a badge of honor. This guy's not a real pastor. He's not a pastor of God. He is a predator. And the last point, PCA talk. What in the world is he talking about? PCA talk, church discipline? No, it's not. Doing church discipline out of for a pure virtue signal, it's not biblical church discipline, yo. That's sending nasty letters, emails with strong words. It's not church discipline. This is not how the PCA does it, guys. I'm sorry. This interview reached thousands and thousands of people, and many people who don't know the PCA, who don't know anything like that, simply believe what this guy said, and this guy's a false prophet for it. And this is not a true representation of how the PCA handles church discipline. Now, the PCA doesn't handle discipline perfectly because there's no perfect church, right? But this is a clear example of how the PCA does not handle church discipline. And if you are in a church that disciplines you for being pro-life, voting for pro-life and stuff like that, then that's not a true church, because one of the true marks of the church is church discipline. And discipline people for their support of like Trump or a political party, or if they believe that the elections are rigged. You can't discipline people for those things per se. You can't. Like, he never mentions actually the book of church order here. This guy's a supposed PCA guy. He never mentions the book of church order to give you a proper definition of what the PCA definition is for church discipline, right? Like the goal and all that stuff. That's chapters 27 through 30. He never deals with the offenses, with discipline, none of that. Because I don't know, because he's probably dumb as a doornail and he doesn't want to tell you because he probably doesn't know it. And you know, sending people letters in the email, yo, just because you voted for the wrong guy or whatever, that's bogus. Like, that's not a church. That's not a pastor. I'm sorry. Instead, you should preach the good news from the gospel. How about you teach the gospel to the people? Tell them, hey, this is who you are in God, okay? Come this election cycle, whatever happens, don't forget this is who you are. You deserve wrath. Remember, God saved you. This is who you were. Preach that. Preach, this is what happens when you and your family love God instead of don't vote for Donald Trump. Like, I'm leaving. Teach me, bro, the gospel. Teach me the Bible. What is a good nation that loves God? What is that nation? What does that nation look like, bro? A whole neighborhood coming to Jesus. What does that look like? I want to know. Instead, you give me nasty emails because I voted for Trump. Whatever, man, get out of here. You admonish your people. Sure, you could warn your people and say, listen, I encourage you to practice wisdom at the election box this Sunday, this Monday, or whatever. Practice wisdom. How about you pray? Hold a special prayer in your church and say, we're going to pray before election. We're going to pray for our leaders. We're going to pray for our government. We're going to pray for whoever gets elected. We're going to pray for them, right? That God will give them wisdom and all this stuff. That's fine. Maybe there's some people at certain churches that really struggle, and there's plenty of those too. How about you give them discipleship? You say, hey, here's a book. Read this book. It helped me. Maybe it can help you. You don't just discipline people, bro. Like, this pastor is lazy, I think. There's much more to be said on this issue. I know it doesn't end with this. There's many questions I didn't answer, but let me quote this. Let me end this issue with a quote from the Book of Church Order, chapter 27, section 4 of what the PCA does when it comes to church discipline. What is it? What's the whole point? Ready? Let me quote it. And I quote, the power which Christ has given the church is for building up, not for destruction. It is to be exercised as under a dispensation of mercy and not of wrath, as in the preaching of the word. The wicked are doctrinally separated from the good. So by discipline, the church authoritatively separates between the holy and the profane. In this, it acts the part of a tender mother, correcting her children for their good, that every one of them may be presented faultless in the day of the Lord Jesus. Discipline is systematic training under the authority of God's scripture. End quote. So that right there, if you did not get it, go ahead and read it. Book of Church Order, chapter 27, section 4. That's what the PCA really does and really believes about church discipline. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Let's go on and talk about a New Jersey Roman Catholic cardinal, because I'm a Protestant and talking about what the Roman Catholics do and believe and talk and all these things, trying to influence politics like they're always doing. Us Protestants, we should be not afraid to talk about it, right? Hold on, let me take a drink. Right? So let's go ahead and talk about this New Jersey cardinal, because and recently it went viral. This cardinal, this Roman Catholic big shot, opened his mouth and he jumped into the Second Amendment conversation about gun control, about guns in the United States. And he said, and I quote, Americans need to voluntarily give up the Second Amendment, end quote. And then he just walked away. So it's like, what? What in the world? And this guy's a leader in the Roman Catholic Church in New Jersey of the East Coast. God save the church, man. God save the king. So there's no question that gun violence in the United States has risen to the level never seen before in American history in terms on the streets and stuff like that. We hear, in my opinion, I think we hear about gun shootings like every Saturday, every weekend. Like some make it on the news, like the big ones, but like honestly, if you look it up, do some like 1 hour research on this, many of them do not even make it on the media news. They don't. They're too small or they're too many. But if you go out for a jog in Chicago, perhaps, like you will come back home with a bunch of bullet shells on the soles of your on the soles of your shoes. That's how much bullet shells are on the streets of Chicago. There's no question. However, you know what I mean? There's no question that Americans love their guns, bro. We love our guns. We love guns in our movies. We love Westerns. We love guns, bro. Like, you ever been to a gun show? Like, it's not easy buying a gun, and they're expensive, and there's many, and they're beautiful. Guns are a beautiful machinery. Dangerous, but beautiful. More than any other ally to America, Americans love guns the most, I think. There's more than 16 million registered guns in America with over 1 billion unregistered guns. And that's just an estimate. Guns are a part of American history. You cannot take that away. You take away guns from America, you take away something very valuable to America. Oh, I'm talking about guns. I thought this was about the Second Amendment. Guns is about the Second Amendment. This Roman Catholic leader failed to mention that, did he? The Second Amendment is a part of history. The Second Amendment has a context. The Second Amendment is a part of the document. The document is a part of American. It's the fingerprint of America in terms of politics and structure and all these things. And he's telling people just to give that up, like put whiteout on it, without mentioning anything that's great and good. And okay, so this guy is a real concern. He has the power to reach millions of people like that. He has influence, millions and millions. I think there's like 1 billion, or like, I don't know how many Roman Catholics are in the world, maybe 1 billion or something. There's so many Catholics in the world, right? So this guy has massive influence. Okay, so however, whatever your opinions on guns, let's not focus that on too much, but let's go ahead and look at it. Because the future of the Second Amendment guns, right, freedom in America is really a concern. It really is. But questions like, the questions should be asked, why do we have the Second Amendment? Like, it's a real question. Like, I think you should ask it. Like, why? Why do we even have it? He didn't even ask that question. He didn't even try to answer that question. Like, it's a real question. It's a real study. I encourage anybody just to do a little deep dive on the history behind the Second Amendment and why they wrote it there. And I give you a clue. And I give you a clue. It's not for hunting. It's not for duck hunting. Okay? Let's go ahead and take a look. Because during the Revolutionary War, the most important weapon, if you really look at it, was the musket. It was a flintlock musket. You know what I mean? It was the most advanced technological weapon of the 18th century was the musket. Okay? And the standard rate of shooting was 3 shots per minute. Pa, 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 per minute. It was pretty powerful, pretty lethal. But the modern question is, do we still need the Second Amendment? Okay? Do we still need the modern muskets? Is this technological advancement of guns and all that stuff, do we still need it? I say yeah, obviously. But can we ban guns? A lot of people are asking, yes, we need it, but we need to ban guns from society. But that's kind of an oxymoron. It's a contradiction statement because you're saying we still need the Second Amendment, but we need to give up guns in society. You're going to have guns in society if you keep the Second Amendment. You cannot have one without the other. This guy is straight up saying you just need to get rid of the Second Amendment, meaning you need to get rid of guns. That's what he's implying here. Yes, it's true. All Democrats would say yes. If you look at it politically, they would say yes to this question. And I really believe only like a really good handful of Republicans would also say yes. So do not be afraid. I mean, don't be naive to think that the Republicans will say no. Like there's a lot of Republicans will say no, but I think a lot of Republicans will also say yes. It's becoming more and more a bipartisan issue. And like this Roman Catholic guy coming on, leader, he's not a guy, a Roman Catholic leader coming on and saying to America, y'all need to give up your Second Amendment. And he has massive influence and connections. Yo, this guy is a false prophet because he's leading a people who love guns and, down the wrong path. A church with, imagine churches without guns in the modern day, bro. You think locked doors could save you? Tasers, maybe swords. If everybody had a sword, but even then, a machine gun shooting 150, 27 rounds, 100 rounds per minute. There's been a lot of mass shootings. So imagine churches right now without the security guards that are armed. Yeah, that's what he's implying here. And people who want to take away guns, they always say the same thing. They always point to other countries. Like, look at other countries. Look at all the countries that ban guns. But you know what they mention? You know what they fail to mention? They always fail to mention the names of those countries. So I did a fact check and I did a research for y'all. And there's about 14 countries where guns are 100% banned. Bam. Like Cambodia is one of them. The Marshall Islands. Obviously the Solomon Islands, Somalia, North Korea, obviously, and then the Vatican. Wow. Okay, so let's go ahead and Burundi, not Burundi, but Brunei. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's BRUNEI. I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's some top country that's been where it's a free nation, free of guns. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this country. According to Freedom House, they rank their country in terms of freedoms 7 out of 40. That's the report card when it comes to freedom as a country. A country without guns, that's their virtue. That's their championship when it comes to the, United Nations or whatever. They claim to be better than America. But look at their freedom card, their report card for freedom. 7 out of 40 in that regards. Very low. Political freedom. 7 out of 40, yo. 21 out of 60 for other freedoms like civil liberties, personal liberty, like all kinds of stuff, business liberties. 21 out of 60, that's also pretty low, dangerous low. It's also ruled by a sultan, a person who thinks he's God ruling over the nation with total absolute power. And you know what's very similar that most of these countries have in common? Like, for example, North Korea and the Vatican, by the way, which is really ironic because the person who's making this claim is a Roman Catholic. The Vatican and North Korea, when it comes to freedom, in terms of guns, it's the same. They're both identical. It's like except North Korea is a whole country. And the Vatican is like a small little dot of a country, the smallest country in the world within Italy. But don't let Italy liberal freedoms fool you from the Vatican country, right? Not the same. You need a passport to get into the Vatican, by the way. There's no guns for any of these kinds of governments on this list. They basically, what does that mean? There's no Second Amendment there. Means that these governments, they enjoy an uninterrupted, powerful regime for years on end. They use the United States gun violence, by the way, as an excuse for their power and corruption to keep the guns out of the people who really need them to protect themselves. So this New Jersey Cardinal, I would say he's out of touch with reality. He is. Because a society with no guns ensures a population free of mass shootings. That might be true. Might be true. Like it is in the Vatican. When's the last time you heard of a mass shooting in the Vatican City? Never. Probably none. Right? I'm sure they took a couple shots at the Pope, but that's not a mass shooting, bro. There's a lot of mass shootings in the United States, which is true. And there's not many in these countries, which is also true. But why? Because on the other hand, it ensures a dictatorship. And the dictators have all the gun power in the whole world in that situation. And the citizens in that country are left with nothing to protect themselves. That's the ultimate truth. That's why they want to get rid of the 2A. Guns provide a deterrent to criminals and dictators. That's why I think that the founders of this country included the Second Amendment in the Constitution to ensure that there's always another roadblock to tyranny, to ensure there's always another deterrent to, criminals when they talk about personal lives, or dictators when it talks to the larger scheme of things. This is why America has a 2A. But he fails to mention this. He fails to talk about this. It's a serious question. So in all societies where guns are illegal, for example, only for citizens, by the way. Illegal. What do you mean? Yeah. Only for who? For citizens. Not for dictators and not for criminals. Hello. They're the only ones that have guns in that society. Where is this true, bro? Tell me. Prove it. It's true in Mexico and China. For example, guns are illegal in Mexico. You can't buy a gun there. Like, you could get a permit for a shotgun, but it is extremely difficult to get one. You have to wait years. You have to pay money. You have to wait years, and it's mostly illegal in most of those Mexican states. By the way, guns are illegal for citizens in Mexico and in China. But guess what? In both countries, both citizens are tyrannized by criminal warlords and the military state. There you go. But you cannot have guns. But guns are dangerous. Yeah, the guns are dangerous. So is fire. So is poison. So is natural. So is chlorine gas. So are all kinds of other things in dangerous, bro. Driving your car is dangerous. You know what I mean? So like, there's a lot of dangerous things. What are you trying to do? Let me end this here. In the words of DMX, guns don't kill people. People kill people, bro. That's the real issue. Like, I know I did not answer, a lot of the questions when it comes to this one topic about guns. Is getting rid of guns, does it really make a better world? In my opinion, my thoughts, my research on this, I'm sure I could learn more. I'm willing to learn more on this issue, by the way. But I think from what I've learned so far, I think it's a lie. Getting rid of guns does not make a better world. Look at Mexico. People aren't allowed to own guns. They can't even kill a coyote if they wanted to, like a real animal, right? Dangerous animal. They can't. And people live, they live with terrible mass shootings in Mexico all the time. I'm telling you, people in America do need the Second Amendment, not the opposite. And this guy is a false prophet for trying to tell the church what to do in this area, what to preach in this area concerning the lives of people's protection. Yo, if you're a pastor out there and you're listening, tell your people to protect themselves. Be smart. Pray for wisdom. Pray for guidance. Get educated with guns. Protect your family. All these things. Don't tell people, don't protect yourself. Like, leave it to the government to protect you. Because look at what happens in Mexico and China, North Korea, and all these places where the government rules and the criminals rules, and the citizens are dying a lot. So with that, let's go ahead and take a 30-second break. All right, so enough of that Roman Catholic cardinal. Let's go ahead and talk about more obvious false prophets, viral clips that went viral on TikTok, Facebook, and all these things. But let's go ahead and, because 1 John chapter 4, verse 1 is encouraging us to test the spirits, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. That's the reality. That's a sad situation. We have to test for orthodoxy. Moses, Nathan said, what's up, bro? We have to test for orthodoxy. It's a real situation. And let's go ahead and look at this clip, because testing a local church for orthodoxy is really not that hard, I think, if you stick to the Bible. If you don't stick to the Bible, like testing for orthodoxy, looking for false prophets in the world, is going to be hard. Because you're reading, like, you're believing, like, how do you know if you're believing the Da Vinci Code versus the Bible, right? You don't know unless you stick to the Bible. Since the 1950s, however, American Christianity, I think, has been plagued with false prophets. I think especially since the 1700s, technically, but these so-called teachers predict the future, bro. Like, they're great. There's many of those out there. They probably don't. They probably don't predict the future. And then when it doesn't come true, they always have something to say, huh? Oh, God must have changed his plans. Yeah. Or, I heard this one false prophet here recently say, I didn't really say a prophecy, It wasn't really prophecy. It was just an encouragement. And it's like, oh, really? That's what you're calling it now? Because we see this type of activity all the time on TV, altar calls, mass healings, exorcisms on camera. Just like the UFO videos, they're all fake, bro. They're all pushing an agenda. They're all trying to convince you to join their church. You know what I mean? So let's go ahead and check out this clip, and then we'll break it down.
Get the Holy Ghost, brother.
Come on. Come on.
Give it to him. Yeah! 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 right. Yes.
Woo! Man, ese vato, like my dad would say, ese vato. Man, that guy was shaking and baking, bro. Like, what's going on here? Seems legit, right? Nah, it's not real. It's 100% fake for real. Like, I know, like, the teachers out there, like Michael Brown of the world, those Michael Browns of the world, like, I could hear them say, bro, like, this is a gross misrepresentation of the Pentecostal and charismatic church, man. Like, that's not us. I'm like, bro, like, you know, it's guys like you, Michael Brown, and those conservative Pentecostals that leave the door wide open for this kind of activity. Go ahead and close the door. There was a cumbia that said, cierra la puerta negra, or, something like that. Go ahead and comment below if you know that old corrido from los huracanes, La Puerta Negra or something like that. I don't know, but like close that door, bro. Close that door, dear Pentecostal friend, because what you're doing is you're accidentally, subconsciously, maybe on purpose, teaching a continuationist point of view, a worldview that says, yo, it's open interpretation up here when it comes to the Bible, man. Man, like maybe they're not being prophets around here, maybe not, you know, apostles anymore, but man, the Holy Spirit could still move and do his thing. You know what I mean? Like the Red Sea, calling down fire, exorcisms, levitations, like all these things, man. It's a massive nuance. All right. See, that's the open door I'm talking about. Close it. La puerta negra, ciérrala, bro. Close it. It's easy to spot if you stick to the Bible, because you know what? This is not the Holy Spirit. What's happening here with this young dude and these ladies at this church is not. But guess what? It, it happens every single Sunday, and that is sad. Sad, bro. It's triste, bro. It's triste. It's sad. It breaks my heart to know that there's churches out there that call themselves churches, and they have all kinds of like exorcisms and healings and like shouts and shakes and bakes. And it's like, this is just biting the carpet. That's all it is. And you know what? This type of behavior is unacceptable, theologically speaking, because it doesn't matter if they feel it or something, or like, how dare you question this gentleman? What if it was real? You know what? It's fake, bro. This behavior is unacceptable. However, many Christians are accepting it, and you should accept it too, bro. That's the thing. You should accept it because many people are accepting it. And it's like, no, bro, like that's unacceptable behavior. I don't accept it. That's not biblical. It's fake. Now you can like, I'm not gonna say like God doesn't heal people. Like, no, yes, God does heal people. It's the when and how you want to answer that question. When does God heal people, and how does God heal people? We don't know exactly when or exactly how, technically, but God does move, and he does answer prayer. He does listen to the prayer of his children, and he does things according to his will. And we don't know exactly what God's will is, where it's going to go tomorrow, or like if it's God's will to actually heal this person, right? We don't know that. Those are tough questions theologically to answer. Some answer it more clearer, very thoughtful, but no one knows exactly when and how. But God does not entertain people. He does not do that. God is not an actor. Healing is not a superpower. People don't just touch you and you're healing. Like, I know the apostles did, but yo, you're not an apostle. That's over. Prophets are over. Rewind the video. I talked about that in the beginning. False prophet. This whole thing is about false prophecy. False prophets, basically. You cannot claim we have healing, though. We healed hundreds and thousands of people. Like, I had this false prophet one time tell me that he healed hundreds of people in a crusade in Africa. It's like, really? That's a bold claim. It really is, honestly. Has anybody done some serious investigation to that claim? Has anybody like done some serious journalism when it comes to this claim? healing hundreds and thousands every Sunday. Like, are there medical records for this to prove this? How about second opinions to those medical records, right? Medical exams to prove that this was an actual healing. How do you know, right? Is there any evidence of what happened to this man after he was so-called healing? Okay, he had a lung disease. He was healed by a lung disease. Let's just say, before, is there a lung disease? Is there medical records? Okay, proving medical records. Okay, after 2 weeks later, after this event, is there still lung disease? Yes. Was it a healing? No. Where's the evidence? Is there any follow-ups? Right? Why? And then here's the thing. Why do all these false prophets always, bro? They always get mad when you ask these questions. Like, it's not like I lack faith. It's not that I don't believe in Jesus or the church or whatever. It's that I'm very skeptical. There's a lot of charlatans. The Bible tells me exactly what to do. And First John chapter 4, verse 1, it tells me to test the spirits. I'm just trying to find verification, trust but verify. You know what I mean, homie? Shoot. Anyways, a church that places heavy emphasis on miracles, they tend not to put a heavy emphasis on teaching the Bible. They don't, because all they want to do is seek signs and miracles. Like one of my old OPC pastors told me, they become signaholics. They become drunk on signs. And this is this video is striking me. You know what I mean? And by the way, have you noticed that Ashbury revival people, they're gone? Remember last year, the Ashbury revival? It took over like 25 days of worship nonstop or whatever. All that jazz is gone, man. Like, where are the healings now? Where's Ashbury now? Gone. It's a fade, bro. It faded away. But you know what? Ashbury revival was an awesome marketing strategy for the Pentecostal and charismatic churches, because that's how they recruit people who are out there hurting, seeking help medically. They need God. They need Jesus. You know what I mean? And they see a video like this. They hear the Ashbury revival. They see people crying, confessing sin or whatever. I'm going to Google a Pentecostal church near me because that's what I need. That's what I want. It's a marketing strategy, from my opinion, from my study. The central focus of the church gathering, is not for healings per se. It's not. It's not for signs. But for what? The central focus of the church gathering is for teaching and preaching the word. That is the central focus of the church on a Sunday. Now, if you want healing, pray to God to heal you. Go to your elders at the church and tell them to visit you when you're sick. Don't go to church, start shaking your body and putting on a performance, because that's not what church is for. And I'll go ahead and end it where I started, is with this verse. Beloved, church people, beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. For many false prophets have gone out into the world. 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. Anyways, if you like the show, go ahead and support me. Buy me a coffee. Click this little QR code. Buy me a coffee. I like coffee. Support the show. Whatever you got to do. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for tuning in. And for those who came in, you have to sound what's up, bro? Anyway, so go ahead and subscribe. Don't forget to leave a comment down below and sign up for my free newsletter, the ChicanoKnox.com. And until next time, God bless.